for joining us today. A couple housekeeping items as people are just logging on and we're just getting started. Thank you to those that are joining us on Zoom, and I know we have a lot of people on Facebook as well, so thank you to everybody joining us. You can see us, we cannot see you, so your cameras are off and your lines are muted. So if you have any questions for us today, please, if you're on Zoom, please type them in the Q&A box at the bottom. If you're on Facebook, we're going to monitor your comments there too. So type your comments in or questions in, and we'll do our best to get to those. I know anytime Marty speaks, there's always a lot of questions. So we will really do our best to get all of your questions answered today. So thank you for joining us. I want to first do some introductions. My name is Kim Brackey, and I'm your moderator today. I'm the Regional Sales and PR Director for Region 1 for South Dakota, but I know we have people joining us from kind of all over the US right now for today's presentation. I want to introduce Marianne Clairday. Marianne is Marty's colleague. She is the former Vice President for the Alzheimer's Association Wisconsin. She was a caregiver for her mother who lived with Alzheimer's for 10 years and is currently assisting her brother, a disabled veteran with dementia. Hi, Marianne, how are you?
Hi there, it's good to see you all.
Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to turn it over right away, just so we don't waste any time, to Marty Schreiber. Marty I've had the pleasure of actually meeting Marty in person last October, all before everything with COVID hit. So I know we're lucky to have you here today, Marty.
Well,
and
thank you.
Marty's the former Wisconsin governor, business owner, and author of My Two Elaines, and he's currently a caregiver for his wife, Elaine, who has been living with Alzheimer's for 17 years. After Elaine moved to memory care 5 years ago, Marty authored a book and made hundreds of appearances nationwide. He seeks to help other caregivers learn, cope, and survive by sharing with others what he wished he had known. With 6 printings and over 41,000 books in circulation, net proceeds from the sale of My Two Elaines are pledged to caregiver support programs. Caring.com has named the book among the best caregiving books of 2017 and 18, and I'm sure beyond that too. And Book Authority has named My Two Elaines one of the best Alzheimer's books of all time. We are grateful to have Marty here on Zoom and Facebook, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marty Schreiber.
Well, hi, good afternoon. I think it's good afternoon to most everyone, or good morning to those. So thank you, Kim. My pleasure, really, and an honor to be with you all. And my thanks to Edgewood Healthcare for the opportunity to be with you. Been a tough year, hasn't it? Gosh, be nice to have this thing come over and be over with as soon as possible. But I am really pleased to be here. And as you may noted in the introduction, Kim said that she gets a lot of questions when I talk. And the first question she gets right out of the box after I'm done speaking is, why did you invite him? And so, but anyway, I will try and, I understand also, Kim said that some of you may have heard me speak before and you're here voluntarily. And that's sort of a first in my political career, but it's the first time that anyone who has ever heard me speak once came back again the second time. Wow, that's an experience for me. And so, well, there's a lot to talk about, isn't there? Certainly the pain and the heartache of not seeing our loved ones. That's been tough. That's been tough. Well, let me tell you a little bit about My Two Elaines. Kim said that some of you may have had the book and read the book. You should know that there have been people who have picked up My Two Elaines and they started to read the book. And it was so something or another, and they couldn't put it down. Now you may think that that's bragging on the author's part, but it's not. I'll tell you how that happens. That people started reading, Last January, we were running out of books, so I went to the printer. I said, "Hey," I said, "we're running out of books. I need books as soon as possible." The printer said, "Okay." Now he finished the order ahead of time. But one of the problems was, you see how shiny that is? See that? That's like a lacquer or a varnish. But what happens, he did not let that dry. And so what happened is it became sticky. So what happened was people picked up the book and they started to read it and they couldn't put it down. So here's the further complications. It's January and you know how cold it gets in the Midwest in never as cold as in North Dakota and South Dakota, never that way, or Minnesota. But anyway, we had a cold Wisconsin. And so what happened was people couldn't put the book down and they had to go to the store. And so what they tried to do is to put their book, their arm through the sleeve of the coat, and they couldn't do it. So what they had to do is they had to drape it over their shoulder, and they walked around, as I think you can see this, my fingers are exposed. So what happened was they got frostbite. And all of a sudden they're accusing me of having 49 cases of frostbite because people picked up my book and started to read it and couldn't put it down. So My Two Elaines, well, let me tell you my first experience with dementia. That goes back to 1978 when I was campaigning for governor. And I remember giving this talk in northwestern Wisconsin in the city of Eau Claire, the university community. It's Eau Claire is maybe 40 miles and 60 miles to the south and to the east of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So anyway, I gave this talk, and after the speech was over, this elderly gentleman came up to me. He pounded me, and he said, "Governor," he said, "that had to be the world's most god-awful speech I've ever heard in my whole life." Well, his wife heard that, and she was embarrassed. She came rushing over, and she said, "Governor," she said, "please excuse my husband. He's old and he's senile, and all he does is just repeat whatever he hears everybody else say." And so that was my beginning. But let me tell you about My Two Elaines. The first Elaine, well, that was the girl that I met when I was 14 years of age in Latin class. Love at first sight. And so we started to date, and then we went steady, and then we got engaged, and then we got married, and 4 children, 13 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren, the love of my life. And I could never have asked for anyone to have been more supportive. If I would run for political office, she would be the hardest working campaigner. If I would lose, she would never let me feel defeated. So that's the first Elaine. Well, the second Elaine began to appear. As Kim said, Elaine's journey is now in 17 years. 12 years we worked together on this journey at home, and finally to the point where the best would be for Elaine to go into assisted living memory care. So we go back to these 7 and maybe 19 years ago. She would get lost going to and from places she had been going to and from for the past 10 years. A great cook, but sometimes she would get the recipes so messed up that she would cry. Did it happen on a Thursday or did it happen on a Saturday? All of a sudden coming up and saying things, I don't know where she got that from. And finally, through our family doctor, he said, best that Elaine be tested. And so, yes, affirmative on Alzheimer's. And so the doctor at that time said there were 4 things that we should be doing. 1, Numenda and Aricept. Those, of course, are the drugs that were recommended. I think they're still recommended, just at least to deal with some of the symptoms. But then socialization is very important. Going for a walk, walking being the exercise best for the brain, and also a glass of red wine every evening. So Elaine got 3 months ahead on the glass of red wine every evening and 4 weeks behind in the walking. But what happened was, as we're on this journey together, I now start to get sick. And what is wrong? I'm having trouble breathing. And go to the doctor, and we go through testing. And in the book, I talk about the fact that we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure out what was wrong. Well, what happened was we finally figured out, and here is the conclusion. If Alzheimer's is bad, ignorance of the disease is worse. And when I say ignorance of the disease, I mean by me, the caregiver, ignorance of the disease by healthcare professionals who do not understand the impact of this disease, not only on the person with Alzheimer's, but also on the caregiver. And so the medical profession, I felt, had better to understand this. And so we're trying to do what we can to have medical professionals, as well as employers, as well as attorneys, as well as financial advisors, have a better understanding of this of this disease. And I think if we can do that, life is going to be better. And well, there's an old saying, rather than worrying about the storm to pass, to try and learn how to dance in the rain. Well, if you have a loved one with Alzheimer's, how can you possibly think about dancing? Well, we can think about trying to do our best to live our best lives possible. And when I said live our best lives possible, what can we do to assuage, to deal with some of this pain? When there's what happens is that you and I, as caregivers, we work so hard to try and help our loved one. And what happens is we think we finally have it mastered. And we wake up the next morning and it's a new normal because the disease is progressive. And what happens is no matter how much we work, no matter how much we try, no matter how much we give attention, what happens is the disease gets worse. And then what am I doing wrong? We say to ourselves. And then we begin to feel guilty. And then we begin not only to feel guilty, but isolated. And what happens then is it begins to affect our health, as what happened to me. And once we got a better understanding about the fact that as a caregiver, you and I are going through maybe unacknowledged depression, unacknowledged grieving, we've got anxiety, and also this disease is not a chicken casserole disease. If you fall and break a leg or a hip, or if you go in for heart surgery, people will bring you chicken casserole because they understand you are incapacitated. Because of Alzheimer's not being understood, people don't know how to act. And so people that we might ordinarily have relied on as true friends, maybe people from church or other organizations who we thought would be there, all of a sudden began to stand aside. And they begin to stand aside because they don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They feel uncomfortable. And now we even begin to feel more isolated. And therein lies the challenge for us caregivers. And that is to try and learn how to dance in the rain. Well, thank goodness there's people like Edgewood Healthcare who understand this whole, I was going to say phenomena, but it's worse than that, this whole experience. And one of the things that I learned best as it relates to living the best life possible, and that is to try and understand. Well, let me tell you a story about the owl and the hippopotamus that fell in love with one another. And they're about to be married. And so what is happening is the hippopotamus is beginning to think about the consummation of the wedding. Well, he's the hippopotamus. He says to himself, how do I do that with a butterfly? He doesn't know how to do it. So he goes, seeks out the wise owl. He says, wise owl, he says, here I am. He says, I'm a hippopotamus. I'm in love with this butterfly. And I'm going to get married. How do I consummate that marriage? Oh, well, says the wise owl, you turn yourself into a butterfly. Well, the hippopotamus accepted that advice, began to walk away, and then it dawned on him, how do I do that? So he goes back and he sees the wise owl. He says, wise owl, how do I turn myself into a butterfly? And the wise owl said, get lost, Buster. I just determined policy. And so what I'm telling you is policy. What I'm telling you is very, very difficult. What I'm telling you is very, very challenging. But the point is, what we have to do is to let go of the person who once was so that we can embrace the person who now is. As long as I tried to hang on to Elaine in my world, as long as I tried to pull her back and keep her close to me in our sphere of friends and understanding, as long as that happened, life was more miserable for her. It's difficult, but once I understood if I join her world, it makes all the difference in the world. It decreases the amount of tension, anxiety, So a while back, Elaine and I are having lunch at the assisted living memory care. And while we're having lunch, she begins to cry. I said, Elaine, why are you crying? Well, she says, I'm beginning to love you more than my husband. Well, I didn't ask her what's wrong with her turkey husband. I didn't do that. But what it proved to me is she does not have to know my name in order for our hearts to touch. And if I can join her world, and if I can have her feel comfortable and confident as to who she is, as she is, again, rather than worrying about the storm to pass, to try and learn how to dance in the rain. Now, 17 years ago, when Elaine was first diagnosed, Alzheimer's could not be cured, delayed, or prevented. Today, 17 years, Alzheimer's cannot be cured, delayed, or prevented. So we have to make more people understand what this Alzheimer's disease is all about. Now, up until COVID, Alzheimer's was the 6th leading killer, probably moved down now to 7 because of COVID. And of those killers at that time, Alzheimer's was the only disease that could not be cured, delayed, or prevented. And so, however, there's some good news. I think, I don't know if this was, well, here, let me share with you what happened. Elaine and I are eating again at assisted living memory care in the lunchroom. And what happens is you get on these questions. How did we meet? How did we meet? How did we meet? Well, Elaine and I said we met when we were in high school as freshmen. And I said, not only did I see you love at first sight, but I knew right away I wanted you for my wife. But I also want you to know that if any boy got within 50 feet of you, I popped him on the head. And so before that, we had been talking about how good she thought I was. She went on to say, oh, you're so intelligent and you're so good looking. You're so intelligent and you're so good looking. Well, what happened was, and this is in sequence, what happened was this doctor and the nurse are sitting over at this table and they heard Elaine tell me how intelligent and good looking I am. And they said, Elaine is getting better. We think she's getting cured because she knows her husband is intelligent and good looking. So what happened is they wrote an article actually to the New England Medical Journal explaining how Elaine Schreiber is getting better because she knows her husband is intelligent and good looking. Well, here's what happened. They wrote back to the doctor and this nurse and he says, you know, you have to show 3 things where someone is getting better. You only showed 2. So now it's the second conversation. And now she goes into how did we meet? How did we meet? Well, here again, same doctor and same nurse sitting over here. Elaine, when we were freshmen in high school, I said, you were 14 and I fell in love with you and I wanted you for the mother of my children. And also you should know if any boy got within 50 feet of you, I popped him on the head. She looked at me and she says, you're a bullshitter. Well, the doctor and the nurse heard that. Well, now they have the 3 things. And so they did write another article for the New England Medical Journal. And if you follow the New England Medical Journal, probably around March or April, you're going to see this article on how Elaine is getting better. And that's really good. This COVID thing, I want to just share something with you. And you and I probably are really pretty much together on this worry. Early on, when there was this heavy quarantine going back into March, my greatest fear was that Elaine would develop COVID and she would die and I wouldn't be able to say goodbye. That troubled me so very, very much. And so what I began to do, I began to think, well, wait a minute, why don't I bring her home with me? They wouldn't let me see her. I did one through a window and that cure was worse than the disease because they tried to get Elaine to look out. And of course her mind was in someplace else and so forth. And that was more painful for me than not seeing her. So we didn't do that anymore. And then we got one of these Apple, FaceTime things. We did a little bit of that and that's not so. So anyway, so I thought about bringing her home. I hire a consultant, what do I do? How do I do this? And so forth and so forth. And so I'm thinking about bringing her home. And now my son, Matt, I have 4 children. Matt's the youngest. He works over at where Elaine is as a cook. And so I'm talking with him, and he said, what? I said, well, I think I want to bring mom home so I can be with her. And he said, why are you thinking that? Well, because I know I would feel better having her close. He says, yes. He said, you would feel better. But what about mom? And so what he did was he said, how long has mom been there? I said, well, she's been there, like 5 years. Okay. He said, many of the people that are there have worked with mom for 5 years. And he said, how often have you seen mom? Oh, I've seen, not 24 hours a day, but as much as I could. Well, he said, so you want to take Elaine and you want to take her out of this familiar surroundings where she is comfortable and has been taken care of in a comfortable position in an area that she is familiar with, plus people that she is familiar with, and you want to bring her home into a strange setting, brand new people taking care of her. And he said, don't you think living the best lives possible is for you to have mom stay where she is as being best for her? And I did conclude that that was the best. That's the thing, we are so well here. And another example of that is it was the Alzheimer's Association helped me with counseling. And so one day I see my counselor. I'm going to just take a sip of lemon juice here. This cup, by the way, from Valparaiso University. And that was the first college university I went to when I graduated from high school. Elaine went to River Forest Teachers College, which was in Chicago. And so, gosh, I burned up a lot of roadway between Valparaiso University and Chicago, about an hour and a half drive. And so what happened was, it's the end of the year, and the president of the university calls me into his office. And he says, Marty, he said, we will give you a scholarship to any university of your choice, as long as it's not Valparaiso University. And not only that, we'll give you a Valparaiso Cup in addition. So I went to a different university here in Milwaukee, and the tuition was really quite reasonable. And so Valparaiso got out of it pretty easy just by simply giving me that cup. So I forgot where I was. Marianne, where was I talking about this whole thing? So we were, I know the counselor. So, and then I had to take a sip because I needed okay. So anyway, so I'm with my counselor, Linda Market, a wonderful human being. And so she says, now what's troubling you? Well, I said, I cannot see putting Elaine into a nursing home. The key word being putting. And so she said, you're not putting Elaine anyplace. What you are doing is to give her an opportunity to be who she is now. And then then Linda said, can Marty Schreiber's 24/7 nursing home care take care of her? Well, that was obvious, impossible. I was sleeping by the door at night for fear she would go out into traffic. It's the constant questions, the constant experience, and then the agony, the frustration, the anxiety of knowing your loved one is not getting any better no matter what you do. And so I concluded that what was more important to me with Elaine going into assisted living, what was more important to me was that I fight this battle with Alzheimer's disease. Forget about Elaine. I had to prove that this disease could not beat me. Well, I had to do that because I was ignorant of the disease. I was not ignorant on the battlefield that this disease plays on. And we best can understand and fight this disease by making sure that we take care of ourselves first. Now it's sort of a hop, skip, and a jump to go from Elaine going into assisted living versus living best life possible and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, Marty Schreiber's 24/7 nursing home care could not take care of Elaine. The fact is, it was my own ego that was fighting Elaine going into assisted living. And once I began to understand that, it made all the difference in the world. Also selfish on my part was wanting to keep Elaine home, knowing that life was getting tougher with anxiety and frustration and so on. And so my children, now really adults, actually had a session with me, and what is it, where you get together and sit the person down and say, look, you better take care of yourself. Intervention. So they had this intervention, and my daughter said, Dad, we have already lost one parent. We don't want to lose two. And so we have a responsibility, I think, to understand this disease better so that we can have our loved one better taken care of, help them live their best lives possible, but to also understand that we ourselves have to try and live our best life possible. And that can be done without forsaking any of our marriage vows. It can be done without backing away from the love that we might feel for our special one. I think we can do that. But I think in order for us really to be successful, we have to understand the toll that this takes on us. As I said, I believe caregivers go through this unacknowledged grief and unacknowledged depression. In the past number of months, I've had a few friends die suddenly. And our society has been able to work and understand and express and acknowledge grief in the death, in the passing of someone. That we can do. We have yet to understand how we can acknowledge and deal with someone who is dying a little bit every day. And there again, it comes into the fact that this is not a chicken casserole disease. People don't really understand it. But it also gets to the point where we caregivers have to understand that we do have these emotions, and there's nothing wrong with it because we happen to be human beings in love with someone special. So what we want to do then, because we want to live our best life possible for our loved one, we've got to take care of ourselves. We have to understand we can't do it alone. Don't think for a moment that that's the case. I have learned that all of the armies marching, all of the navies sailing, all of the beer that's brewed, all of the liquor that is distilled is not going to stop this disease. What I have to understand is how can I help Elaine and how can I help me live our best lives possible rather than worrying about the storm to pass to try and learn how to dance in the rain. Okay, what do we need to do? Well, you and I need to make sure that we understand we can't do it alone. We have to make sure that we get exercise. Exercise is the best and most important, one of the most important things we can do to keep our body functioning, but also to help our brain. Walking is the best exercise for the brain, so they say, but then also watch our diet and get enough sleep. We get overtired. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you when I felt trapped, when I felt that I had no options, overtired. I am so embarrassed at the number of people that I lost my temper with, whether it was the person behind the car rental counter or whether it was someone calling me up about checking on the bank account or something like that. Horrible. And so that's not living my best life possible. That's not living my best life possible at all. And so when we talk about knowing about this disease, this fellow is driving along in a car, and he comes across a body in the road. He gets out seriously injured. So he gets on 911. He says, "There's a body in the road. Come quick." And the dispatcher says, "Yes, sir. Where are you?" "Well," he says, "I'm over here on Pistachio Street, but send help right away. This man is really seriously hurt." The dispatcher says, "Sir, how do you spell pistachio?" He says, "Spell pistachio." He says, "This man hurt." He says, the dispatcher says, "We have to get the emergency medical team to the right place. How do you spell pistachio?" The man says, Never mind, he says, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. Well, the dispatcher, I thought you said it's seriously ill. Why will you call me back in 5 minutes? The man says, I'm going to drag the body over to Elm. And so the point of the matter is, not everyone knows how to spell pistachio. Not everyone knows about this disease. Not everyone knows how to handle it. So we ourselves have to understand so we can fight it on the battlefield that it chooses. And I think we can do a better job in helping ourselves and our loved one live better lives. What I want to do is, what I want to do is read a couple of. So anyway, here's. I write the book. Marty Schreiber is sharing his book with people. I feel really good. Maybe about 5 weeks before we're ready to go to print, I run across a series of notes and journals that Elaine had been keeping since her early onset diagnosis. Well, I tell you, we had prayed together and we had cried together, but never did I understand the courage that it takes to be diagnosed with this illness and then go forward. That struck me so strong because what was going on this journey, without me really truly understanding what Elaine was going through, I really didn't understand how important I was in her being and her quality of life. She knew that her mind was leaving her. She knew that I was her lifeline. And here this guy is all of a sudden yelling at people. Here's another point. I just want to mention this because Linda Market made this so important. And that is, I see Linda one day and I said, Linda, I said, I feel so guilty. I don't feel like seeing Elaine. I just don't want to see her. And I feel so, she said, good, don't. And I said, well, what do you mean don't? Well, she said, a person with Alzheimer's, because of their changing mental situation, they become so attuned to emotions and feelings that if you want to go and cheer Elaine up and make her a happier person, and you feel all kinds of turmoil inside, she's going to pick that up. And where you're going to want to visit with her and give her peace of mind and make her feel more comfortable, you're actually having the exact negative effect. And so, again, understanding this disease better, I think will help us immensely in helping our loved one live their best life possible. So anyway, so now I find these notes. So I was able to capture some of them and put them in the book. Okay, now I'm really good because I have Elaine and I have me and everything's cool. Well, along the way, I forgot to even ask my children how they feel. I forgot to have them share my grief. I didn't even get involved in understanding and want to share with them their grief. And so, we get all trapped up in all of these emotions and so forth. And if we can, try and be a little smarter. Try and learn how to dance in the rain, understand people around us and how they're feeling, and know that that we owe it to our loved one to be healthy. So anyway, I'm going to read just a couple of things, and then I'm going to tell a story about. I'm going to tell a story about patience, prayer, and persistence. And so I'm just going to when Elaine was diagnosed, this goes back to 2009, and I'm going to read from the book. Oh, by the way, we have a website, my2elaines.com, all one word. And we try and write a monthly newsletter to be a topic of the times and so forth. But anyway, let me read this from March 11th. She writes, it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I really had to say, yes, I do have Alzheimer's. I had read of signs that indicate Alzheimer's, like getting overly upset for no reason, having trouble with names and directions, but I still didn't think it was a problem for me. But in hindsight, for too long, I've been getting lost driving, having trouble keeping days straight, and difficulties with names and schedules. Still, I still felt I could handle it. It won't get worse. But this morning, I started reading about the mid stage of Alzheimer's in hopes of preparing myself better and realized I am not very far away. That is most scary, but I have to accept it. So then, on a couple of occasions, she wrote on this journey. She writes on July 3rd of 2012. She writes, Marty is still a very good husband, and I can't blame him for being a little short sometimes. It has to be a problem for him. It puts more responsibility than he can handle sometimes, but he knows I'm trying my best and he tries hard to help me. I know it's no easier for him than for me. But a picture into her heart. Just two more here. I want you to know, this is just simply a note that she wrote. She writes, I would be so lost without you. So please continue to take good care of yourself for me as well as for you. So in reading this one, I want to try and underscore how important you are as a lifeline to our loved one. She writes, my Marty, who is and always has been my strength and comfort, I thank God every day for his understanding, loving ways, patience, and good humor, hard work. He made it possible not only for 4 wonderful children and a wonderful, exciting, and busy life, but he helped me throughout his lifetime. So to give you a sense of what she's going through, a little bit later, listen to this. I'm not enjoying my role anymore as Marty's wife. Because of his having concerns about my Alzheimer's, he doesn't let me be me. He doesn't let me go for a walk if I want to, or to the store alone. I used to appreciate him, what I thought was concern, but he holds me captive much too much. I'm going to try and have a second opinion because I really don't think I have any problem. I know how to drive or walk any place, but he doesn't believe me, and I hate the control he has placed on me. I don't even think I have Alzheimer's per se. And so here again, to try and learn how to dance in the rain, and that is by better understanding what is going on in our own mind as well as in the mind of our loved one. Now I'm going to read just one more. This is my very favorite one. And she writes, life is good, and I plan to have it continue that way until my children tell me it's time for a nursing home or something like that. This is realistic with what my Alzheimer's book says about my future. But till then, I will try my best to be normal, whatever that means, and keep my happy side of life always continuing. I'm lucky to have such a good family, many friends to help me get through all this. And so another great day to thank the Lord and smile, smile, smile. So now the prayer, persistence, and patience. And
Hey,
then,
Marty?
yeah.
Marty, I'm wondering if you want to end with that, but because we do have some questions and answers. Does that sound good, Kim? Should we jump into Q&A, if that'd be all right?
Sure, we can do Q&A and then end with patience, persistence. What did you say?
Prayer.
Prayer. There you go. I'm getting mine off. Yeah, we can jump right into those and we'll end with that. A couple comments here. I just want to, Dean said, gotta thank you for the book and Elaine Governor. It finally woke us up to long-term care insurance and how needed it really is. And then there was another comment about, thank you so very much for the autograph book. I love this. I love it. This is a true honor to hear Marty speak. Thank you for offering this, Edgewood. And another comment that I just thought was really nice was, Marty, your transparency is so appreciated. Thank you so much for sharing the beautiful stories of you and Elaine. It's an honor to hear you speak. And I think more people could probably type those things, because every time I hear you speak, I'm blown away, but it is so valuable. And it's just wonderful that you're willing to give a picture, give us a look into your life with you and Elaine, because I really think it helps people know that they're not alone. And I guess I'll start with that question. since I've heard you, I'm a little bit at an advantage since I've heard you talk before. And I remember one of our presentations, you talked a little bit about needing to ask for help. And I know that's something that we work with a lot with Edgewood, but anywhere. Sometimes we'll run into families where dad doesn't want to ask for help with mom. He's got it under control. He's like, I'm fine. I don't need your help. And I have a husband that I love dearly. So I say this but there are times where he won't ask for directions. So let alone if something was needed with me, he may not ask for help. What advice do you have, Marty, for the men that might be listening to this and asking for help with their wife if their wife has some Alzheimer's or needs some additional care?
I covered that a little bit, and what I think is involved here is the male ego. You know, we throw the winning touchdown. We don't need to ask directions because we know how to get there anyway, and so forth. And so I think the question that we men have to ask ourselves: what is our responsibility to help our loved one live their best life possible? What is our responsibility to ourselves and our children to help us as caregivers live our best lives possible? That's sort of the beginning, because as I said, I think it was ego that prevented me from thinking about the possibility of Elaine going into assisted living. I wasn't going to give up. And so somehow or another, I would ask men, particularly, to look at the kind of life you could help your loved one live in a better situation, where she's better taken care of and where you yourself can be helpful. But I will tell you this, and a very close friend, his wife had Alzheimer's, and I'll tell you, I could not. He would yell at her because she wanted another blanket, though she had enough on. He would yell at her if she would want another cookie, although she just had a cookie. And I said, Bob, I said, please. And I would try and reason and have him understand that. And the children worked with him, and we couldn't move him. We just couldn't move him. Now, I understand also, I want to just let everyone know the Alzheimer's Association has an 800 number, 24/7, day or night, 800-272-3900. It could be that some of these questions would not only be good for the Edgewood people, but also for the Alzheimer's. But here, Mary Ann, tell me, what do you think? You've got how many brothers? 8 brothers? 9?
Yeah, and everyone handles this disease differently, obviously. When it's time to ask for help, some people are afraid of getting a no. I say you ask and you receive. And I think many people don't even know they need help. And sometimes it's joining a support group just because your children encouraged you to, or one of your family members, and you listen. And again, Kim, you realize you're not alone in this. And especially during COVID, I mean, we all need to support each other and rely on each other, but we have to hold on to that hope because now we have a vaccine. Months ago, we didn't have that. So there are good things coming. Just remember, you've got that connection with your loved one. You have people surrounding you that want to help you. So ask, receive gratefully, and then help other people. If you've got extra time on your hand because maybe your loved one is quarantined, then think about other ways that you can do something nice for other people, to bring that joy and that happiness and that light spirit back into your life. So asking for help is one of the most important things you can do. Do it for yourself, do it for your families.
So now you can know why it's a pleasure to work with Mary Ann. She just always cheer. I can do no wrong with Mary Ann. You know, whatever it is, if I run over, you know, a bunch of flowers and so forth. Oh, that's just wonderful. You did that so nicely, but maybe you should use the street, you know? So, but anyway, with this being the Christmas season, I want to let everyone know I'm registered at Sears and Roebuck. And so please, there's no limit on how much you can spend on me, nor is there a limit on what how many gifts to buy me. Sears and Roebuck. Remember that.
That's good advice. We'll remember that, Marty. I don't know if everybody has your address, but maybe they can send it through the website or something, gift certificates. I have a good question that came in early on. Anne was wondering if the facility Elaine is in lockdown too. If so, what are you doing to stay connected? One thing I want to say before Marty answers this question is keep in mind every state is a little different on what their Department of Health and what their community spread is. So Marty can answer this and I want him to, but I also want everybody to keep in mind that the city you're in, the county you're in, and the state you're in really dictate visitation or different things like that. So Marty, how have you stayed connected with Elaine through COVID?
Well, in the beginning, I think we went March, April, May, June, July, August. I don't think I saw her personally. I did mention that we did this see through the window, and that was not good at all. And so I missed her terribly. And then they opened it up a little bit, and then now 1 hour a day, twice a week. And so that is the time that I feed her that time. And so, but I do not go, they do not allow people into the living quarters. That when I am with Elaine, they bring her out and we go into a separate room, and the room is washed down, and I have to wear a face mask as well as a face shield, and so just those 2 hours a week are a godsend. And but in addition, Kim, some assisted living have also different regulations on a more stringent basis, depends upon what's going on inside the home, whether it's a relative or an employee or someone who, and so they may then again shut it down. And like when I thought about bringing her home, I missed her so terribly much. I was gonna, but then common sense has got to come into play. And as much as we miss our loved one, we got to do it.
That's thank you for walking through that. We know this hasn't been easy for you or any of these loved ones who are split apart from their spouses or their family members, whether it's their parent or a sibling. Obviously, COVID's been difficult on all of us, but especially with long-term care settings. A really good question came in from Melinda, and I think this is worth talking about. She wants to know, how do us siblings convince our dad it's time to leave home to assisted living memory care? He is a stubborn German. Any thoughts there?
Marianne, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, I know a few stubborn Germans. My dad was one. What I would say is that it's important to go through the testing, to ask them to do the memory, testing, so you can ask for a professional's input on what they need. And that's kind of how I transitioned my mom. I said, gee, Mom, I can't decide where you need to live or where they recommend you live, but let's go through these tests and see what they recommend. And then it really became the memory testers and the doctors saying, your mom needs assisted living. And so it was almost like having them write a prescription for assisted living memory care. And then the fight was taken, the irritation or anger was taken away from me and my brothers. It was more on the medical community, but she was willing to then make that leap. And especially if you have someone who just cannot take care of themselves and the family is running themselves ragged. I know Marty talks about this. It's at one point, you as a family cannot provide 24 hours, 7 days a week care. And the best place would be in a place where they have a fresh set of eyes and hands and hearts that walk in every day, every 8 hours, 12 hours to assist. So that's what I would do. And, we can definitely, Marty gave you the 800 number for the Alzheimer's Association. That's another excellent question. Just make that phone call and ask for their guidance. Yeah. I was going to say one more thing Marty does, I know, for where Elaine is at. he brings gifts and treats to the workers there, general type things. And you bring food, you bring things to let those caregivers know they're loved and appreciated. And they always continue to take great care of Elaine. But it's another way to stay close, knowing you can't see them every day, but you're taking care of the people who are seeing your loved one every day. So follow the rules of what those facilities allow you to do. Maybe ask the question, but it's a great way to stay connected. So
Another way of what Marianne said is, if at all possible, at all times, keep out of the line of fire. And Marianne mentioned, you know, for the doctors to write like the prescription for the need to go into assisted living. The same thing, you know, when it's time, when it's not safe for the person to drive anymore.
Mhm.
Okay? My gosh, for the caregiver, it's wise to make sure that those keys are not there anymore. But it's not the caregiver, it's the doctor who says you shouldn't be driving anymore, or it's the insurance company which was slow on renewing the policy, or it was the mechanic who messed up the engine and so forth. But the more we can keep out of the line of fire, the easier it is for really everyone.
You like to call that therapeutic fibbing, right, Marty?
Well, we have called it therapeutic fibbing, you bet. And yeah, therapeutic fibbing.
I tried that with a family once where we were talking about taking the keys away from mom, and the problem was they owned a car dealership. So mom was like, well, just get me a different car then. It didn't, the therapeutic fibbing doesn't always work, but I think that's the grace of trying it, seeing if it helps. And if it does, great. Then if it helps calm somebody down, that's a great approach to take. If it doesn't, then try a different approach next time. So there's been a couple other comments about just, I believe my wife and maybe me are in the first stage of Alzheimer's or dementia. I have a daughter with PTSD. Thanks for the book. It's helped us greatly. And then somebody else talked about fascinating to get an understanding about the Alzheimer's patient heightened sensitivity to emotions. And I think those letters from Elaine are so key for that, Marty. This will help me navigate in my mother's world and how I can best help her. You described me perfectly in being tense, frustrated with her state. I will approach my contact with her differently going forward. So that was just another really good comment about those letters from Elaine. I'm so glad that those are added in the book, because you'll see them if you haven't read your book yet. They're spread out periodically through, a lot of times at the end of a chapter, but they're in there from Elaine. And I think those are so valuable. One other comment about, this is from Rich. I cannot describe how closely my experience as a caregiver mimic the descriptions in your book. From the initial stages to sleeping near the door for fear of her leaving the house. We eventually had to go to double-sided locks. I am lucky in that I have an amazing support system, and it was very hard on me making the decision to place Robin in an assisted living memory care. Reading your book a couple times changed my way of thinking, changed my life and way of thinking and handling my wife's Alzheimer's care. Thank you, sir, for sharing your story. Thank you, Rich, for that comment. I know, Marty, a lot of times after you present, you have people gather around you and talk with you for 20, 30 minutes, share your story, share their stories and talk to you. And we don't get to do that as much on Zoom, obviously, with nobody's cameras being on. So some of these comments, I wanted you to hear from people because I think they're really helpful for your story really resonates with a lot of people. One last question, I guess, would be, as a caregiver, Marty, how do you take care of yourself and stay healthy? What does that look like for you now? And even when Elaine was still home with you, what did that look like?
Well, we could write the book on my two Martys. The first one was atrocious because at times I felt hopeless, and I would eat. And as I said, I learned about the fact that alcohol isn't going to be really any answer ever. And I thought I could do it myself, and all of these tensions and emotions were simply mounting. And so I did a horrible job of taking care of myself. Not only that, but it manifested itself with the breathing problems and the walking problems and so on. And I think that's the human way of just trying to somehow or another get through this all. And once I understood I couldn't do it alone, and once I understood I had to join Elaine's world, and once I understood that my responsibility is to help her live her best life possible and not my dictating, uh, then I guess you get to a degree of acceptance and you begin to understand I have obligations, responsibilities, and am loved by many people. And I sort of owe my wife, and I sort of owe my children and my grandchildren to live my best life possible. And then that then allows you to understand that you still can make a difference and help people and contribute. So now I take yoga maybe twice a week. I go for a walk. I'm working on my balance. A while during this course, when I wasn't taking care, I fell and I broke my kneecap and I fractured my wrist and I was in horrible shape. And I guess, again, it gets to the point, sometimes I think I had to hit myself over the head to get smart on this thing. But between the yoga and the walking, it's made a big difference. And also trying to eat smart and higher at this Christmas time, but eating smarter. So how do you do it? You just got to come to grips with the fact that you're no good to anybody if you're sick. You're no good to anyone if you're causing more health problems for yourself. And so I tell myself, get with the program, fella.
Thank you for all your words today. I think you could probably end on your patience, prayer, and persistence.
Well, now that you've built it up, but anyway, it's so great to be interrupted to hear. First of all, I love all you guys. Thank you for your courage, for your heroics, for your. I know it's tough. I pray to God, we could just erase the negative, but I salute you. So anyway, prayer, patience. This woman had this parrot. All this parrot said, Polly wants a party. Polly wants a party. Well, she graduated from the University of South Dakota with the highest degree. And she's having her classmates over and for the weekend. And she's thinking, they're going to hear my parrot. Polly wants a party. That's horrible. They're going to think less of me. So she doesn't know what to do. So she finally decides, I'm going to see my minister. And she goes, she's her pastor at the church. She says, Pastor, help me. I've got this parrot. Polly wants a party. My friends are coming over to visit. What am I? The minister said, this is a miracle. He says, I myself have two parrots. He says, Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot. He said, I had Peter Parrot and Paul Parrot for 7 years. And they pray all the time. Every minute of every hour of every day of every week of every month, For 7 years, they've been praying. And what we should do is you get your parrot and bring it over and put it with my parrot. And then my parrots will be a good influence on your parrot. And so they agreed. So the lady goes home and gets her parrot and brings it in and they put the lady's parrot. Sure enough, Polly wants a party. Polly wants a party. Peter Parrot looked at Paul Parrot and said, our prayers have finally been answered. Merry Christmas, everyone. You're terrific. Thank you for the opportunity. And
thank you so much, Marty, Marianne, for both of you being here today. I know this is a busy time of year. So thank you both for your expertise, your wisdom, your knowledge, just about this. Thank you for opening your heart and your life, Marty, with your book, with this book. I read it a few times now, and I am so glad we've been able to help get it out in the hands of more and more people. Along those lines, we do have a limited number of books still available that I have here at my house that I'll mail out to people. So if you have not received your free copy of the book, you can email info@edgewoodhealthcare.com and email me your address. It's info@edgewoodhealthcare.com. Limited number of books though. So if you watch a recording of this video 2 weeks from now, I probably will be out of books by then. I'll send out as many as I have. So please email me and I can try to get you your free copy. If we run out of free books, I just want to make sure you're also No, they're available for purchase on mytwoelaines.com. You can buy them on Amazon, but one thing that I know has been really helpful for a lot of people is it's on Audible. And on Audible, if you have a parent, maybe that has some macular degeneration, or they're maybe not reading books they don't want to, Audible is a great version. And Marty, it's actually your voice. I haven't ever listened to it, but it's your voice reading it on Audible. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And your kids, I think, even one of your kids does the children's part?
Most of them, they're all involved in
Okay.
their segments, yes.
So that's a wonderful, that way you can get Marty's same, it's not just some random ghost reader, it's actually Marty reading it. So that Audible book is also available. Today was our 5th session in our 6-pack series. So our final and last session is going to be in 2 weeks, and that's going to be on Wednesday, December 30th, also at 12 noon Central Time, 11 Mountain. And that final session is going to be on end of life and hospice. So if you just joined us for this 5th session, we know we have a lot of new people on today. You can still use the same link that you clicked on today to join us for that 6th session. So please join us in 2 weeks for the final session if you're interested. Today's session will also be recorded. So if you listened or came on late, or maybe as you were listening thought, my loved one needs to hear this, my neighbor, my coworker, my brother, whoever it is, today's session will be recorded and will be emailed out. The link will be emailed out, so you can certainly watch it at a later time or share that link with someone else. So thank you again, Marty, Elaine, Mary Ann. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone who joined us on Zoom and Facebook today. We appreciate you jumping on in your busy time of this holiday season and just learning a little bit more about Marty and his story. And thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Have an
Thank
awesome
you.
day.